Commercial Construction Coffee Talk fans, thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation magazine. This is what it used to look like. We're 100% digital now, but oh man, the magazine used to love getting this. We had 29 million people hit our site last year and crossed the 3 million mark for the month of November, first time ever. So I'm hoping in 2023, with your help out there, consuming content, et cetera, that will go over the 30 million mark. What a way to go to, end the new year off. And before you know it, it's going to be the holidays, and we'll be looking at, and then I'll go on January 1st or 2nd and look at my stats to see if I made it. So, it was funny last year when I crossed the 3 million, I was at a reception out in Phoenix, and I woke up about 3:34, and it was December 1st, and I just had a great reception. I saw some friends I hadn't seen in a long time, and it was just good to see people out. And I went online, I looked, and I'm like, oh my God, I crossed 3 million. It was like 3,180 or something, but I made it over. Winning ugly is nothing wrong with it. It's the W that counts. So I'll take the ugly wins. As long as I got over. I was like, God, I posted so much stuff this month. I've got to get over. Because when December, I was going to make it up, because as soon as Christmas comes, everything kind of shuts down and people go do their thing. So I knew what I was going to do in December. But thank you all from all you out there. I mean, you were awesome. Consuming the content, and we really appreciate it. Super Bowl week. It's Thursday. Game in 3 days. It's picking up steam. I'm from Philadelphia. I already wore my green colors on one of my earlier episodes this week. So, I got the Harley on today, but all my friends, they're going crazy. I got a couple of my friends staying. My mom's got a place in Cave Creek, which is north of downtown Phoenix in the foothills. So they're all staying at the house, and they're still trying to find tickets, but they don't care. They're just going to go down there and, and hang out if they don't get into the game. But all my friends in Philly, they say Philly is just going berserk. And what's crazy is when I grew up, I loved Len Dawson from the Kansas City Chiefs, Ed Podolak. I just, for some reason, I was from Philly, but I really liked the Chiefs, and I had a thing of Len Dawson, and he's one of the, Hall of Fame quarterback. And anyway, so I'm kind of pulling for both, believe it or not, because I always liked the Chiefs. And but I'm from Philly, and my uncle was Leonard Toews. He's the owner of the Eagles, and then he sold the team to my cousin Susie, and she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She was the first female GM in the NFL, and then she sold the team to the current owners, and now the team's worth billions and billions of dollars from what she sold out. But still, she's doing okay. So Aunt Susie, you did an awesome job. But as long as the game's close, I'm psyched. I don't want to see a blowout. I just want to see a close game, and may the best team win. They're two great teams, and it's going to come down to a couple plays, and hopefully all the commercials were fun, and you guys will all enjoy the halftime, and and there goes the season, and before you know it, it'll be football again. It's lacrosse time for me. I got my sticks up. University of Denver opened up against Utah, beat them 12-4. And we got a couple out of conference games. We got Duke coming up in North Carolina, and then we'll go into the Big East play. And this year, the University of Denver coach, his name is Coach Bill Tierney. He's been coaching college lacrosse for 42 years. He's got multiple national championships, and a boatload at Princeton when I was in prep school in the 80s. He went out to DU after long way after I was gone. Anyway, they won the championship in 2015, and he's been right there over the last couple of years. And so I just wrote him a note and said, hey, Coach T, it'd be great if you retired, after the spring, which he's going to go out and win the national championship and have a nice, it's just like a great, this could be a movie. So, we're pulling for the Pios. Our hockey team's, top four. I don't know where they are, but we just beat CC for the Golden Pan out in Denver. So Colorado College, it's the big rivalry, on the frozen pond. So it's actually, it's been a great week, and I'm looking forward to the game. I hope you are too, and have fun with friends, and, and just, enjoy it. So with that said, today I have a guest down in the great state, the Sunshine State of Florida. His name is Bob Moore. And he's the VP of ops and business development for a company called Water Restoration Group. And what they do is they actually, after disasters, things that happen, they go out and they help people get back on their feet. And and God knows, we know the storm came in at Fort Myers and earlier last year, and I've seen plenty of storms in my life. And what happens is they come up through Florida and they come through Georgia, and we get the winds. And even though Atlanta is hundreds of miles from the coast, let me tell you, some of the storms, I've been in Atlanta since '92, and I've had multiple storms come in, and believe me, the wind can get you. If the water doesn't, the wind will get you. So it's so but that storm, that the last storm that hit, some of the video that I saw was just unbelievable. I had some of my friends say, I used to go to a bar right down there and it's gone. There's nothing left of it. And so people, and listen, they're still, they still need a lot of help down there. It's kind of like the storms happened 6 months ago. Is that about right? 6 months ago, Bob?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, about 6 months ago, and people kind of forgot about it. But there's still people that haven't gotten the help or haven't had the insurance companies cut their checks, and there's still people that are reeling it in there that went through it. And so don't forget about those things, because people like Bob are out there helping them, and other service companies. And it was great because I have a piece of land up on the lake, and I needed to get a tree cut down because it was growing in my neighbor's yard, and the storm was coming in that weekend. And our tree guy, he goes, "David, man, I just filled my truck up. I'm going out of Florida. I'm going to cut wood, man. You won't even find a tree cutter in Atlanta, man. Anybody that's anywhere around here, everybody's going to go to the electrical people, the linesmen, tree cutters, roofers, you name it. They all went down there." And hopefully they were honest contractors, because we don't like that, when people jab them during, for price gouging and stuff during, time of need. But I was like, oh, really? You can't just come out here and do it quick. He said, "Dave, man, I'm out of here. I'm going down, man." So anyway, so Bob, this is the way we do it. We do it in 3 parts on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. You tell your story, where you grew up, where you went to school, you play any sports, got any animals, dogs, cats, whatever, goats, and how you ended up, at Water Restoration Group. And then we'll talk about, the shutdown over the roller coaster over the last, the 30 months, 3 years or so. And then you'll leave a positive thought or phrase with our listeners out there. So with that said, the floor is yours. Tell us.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. That introduction, I loved it. And I thought about my mom, because she is a sports nut, right? Like she would watch college basketball, and she lived in Alaska, where we didn't have a home team. I was born and raised up there. And she would call me up, and I'm grown, but I've got small kids, and she'd be talking about all the teams in the Final Four or in the big tournament. And she would know all the different teams, and even the last ones that just got in, the smaller ones. And she'd be asking me questions. I'm like, "Mom, I've got kids. And I coach. I don't follow that as much. I'll watch later in the tournament," but she'd be into it. So she would love your recap and just, be into all the sports you just brought into that short intro there. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I knew that LeBron was probably going to break it that evening, and my wife, she can handle any sport. I mean, we his son, he did roller hockey, he did lacrosse, he did taekwondo. We never forced it. We did all that stuff. I was on the board of the lacrosse league. I coached. I did the rec league. I did the select team. I traveled. I did the high school. I mean, I still play in the old guys league. And she's like, "I can't stand basketball. Please turn the basketball off." And I always tell her, "Look, I don't care about the first half. The game's always won in the third or fourth quarter. But look, right. LeBron's gonna score like he's gonna become the all-time leader. All right. And I know that they're gonna stop the game. And sure enough, they did. They did the big hurrah. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there, and he gave him the ball. And it was really cool. And they ended up losing the game. And they were playing Oklahoma City. And but it was a really cool thing. Even if you don't like LeBron, some do, some don't. You know what? He's an amazing player. Yeah. He practiced, and he's a perfectionist. And whenever I coach, I always just say, you will play as you practice. And the people that practice the most are the people that are champions. And he had the opportunity to do that. And it's an amazing thing to score 38,388 points and still counting. Yeah. So my hat's off to him. And it was just, it was a nice moment. It was, and they had all the stars were out there in LA. And so, congrats to him. But, talking about sports, I mean, you don't have to be male or female. That's great that, she's, into all that,
Yeah. She was self-taught in every sport. My older brother. So I grew up in Alaska. She's full-blooded Eskimo. So I grew up out there, not a house around for like 4 miles, very unique childhood. We only went to the grocery store for like condiments and things like that. Everything else we put on our table, either we hunted or grew it. So really interesting childhood. But she got into sports and just started watching on TV and self-taught everything about sports.
So we were outside Juneau, or what?
No, we are actually outside of Anchorage.
Anchorage, okay.
In Elmendorf Air Force Base. So my dad was in the Air Force, and he was a civil instructional engineer, and then went to work for the government. We ended up moving down to the DC Baltimore area, and he worked in DC. That's where I went to school, high school, and I played football, basketball, and baseball all 4 years.
That's Lacrosse Haven. Come on, Baltimore. That's lacrosse land down there.
It is Johns Hopkins right there, right? But no, I was a baseball guy. So I played baseball through college. I was a catcher, and loved it. And then went on to coach and had my kids. I have married with four kids, and two of them got into baseball and loved it. So I coached them for years and loved it. Played in the old man's league like yourself, the over 35 wooden bat league till, I was in my 50s, and loved that. But I've always loved sports, and that's great. You got to see him. I wasn't able to catch the game. I had a previous obligation, but you saw history, right?
Yeah, no, everybody had
or not. Yeah, whether you love him or not, you got to see history in sports being made. And as you were, telling that story, it took me back. I got to see Cal Ripken break the record.
Oh yeah, you know what? So did I. That was that. And he's a Baltimore guy.
Yeah. I was out in left field in the bleachers. I got the tickets through a vendor of ours, and the person they wanted to go, but they didn't want to fight traffic. They were torn between that. So I got free tickets to go. Me and a buddy were out in left field. When Cal did the lap around the stadium, I looked at each other. He and I were bawling like babies. It was like such a great moment. So yeah, but it was good. It was a lot of fun. And then moved on and ended up getting into franchising. So I always knew I wanted to own my own business. I just didn't know what. So I remember I worked at a pizza place one summer, and it was fast, it was fun, and the owner seemed to do pretty well for himself. So that's what got me into Domino's. I spent 13 years with them. First 6 working for corporate and various franchise owners. The last 7 years, I was a multi-unit Domino's franchisee, so I owned multiple Domino's stores. Ended up selling them when Bain Capital bought the company. They were doing a lot of things I didn't really care for, but hey, they bought it. They earned the right to do it. Right. Sold my stores and ended up going to work for Service Master on their corporate support staff, and then also worked with Dunkin' Brands, parent company for Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin and Robbins, for about 10 years. So had 30 years in franchising. Love the business model. Love working with entrepreneurs and things like that. Moved to Florida and ended up hooking up with these guys, and it's been great. They're, it's a small company. We're an emerging brand, and it's like working for a startup. So absolutely love the Florida weather. Get to ride my bike, year round pretty much, my road bike, and absolutely love it.
Being a catcher, all right, you're kind of like the quarterback, believe it or not. If those of you that don't understand baseball, there's 9 guys on the team, on the field. You got the pitcher, you got the guys in the outfield, the guys in the infield, but the catcher, he's pretty much calling the game, because if he calls the wrong pitch, or he knows where, if they're in scoring, the catcher is probably he's the quarterback as far as I'm concerned. And you gotta have guts to hang in there to take foul balls, or block the ball in the plate, and you got to be a tough son of a gun to be a catcher. It's just I played, like we were talking before we went on. I played baseball. I caught. I pitched. I did just like lacrosse. I go in the goal if I have to. I play backup. I'm not worried about it. And but you got to have guts, though, because that ball hurts. And especially and what happens? It's like when I was on the ice or lacrosse, I'd always get beamed. You could have all the equipment on, but there's always that one little inch where you don't. And that's where you're going to get it. The ball finds it, or the puck finds it, so.
No doubt. I love being a catcher, because you're right. I mean, later when I played in old man's league, I didn't catch because my knees were kind of hurting. So I played in the infield and things like that. And it just, the pace of it was harder. When you're a catcher, you're on every pitch and you're controlling, you're calling the game, things like that. You can see everybody. It's a very different ball game.
And you play the whole game.
That's it. That's it.
You're out there.
And the fun thing is, I was a good high school player, but then you go to the next level, and everybody who's there was a really good high school player, right? And our coach had played small ball before, there was small ball became a thing. We had a 140-page playbook, that we had to learn. We had 12 different bunt defenses. We had 4 different people that gave signals. So no team ever stole our signal because there were 4 different people. They each gave a piece of it, So It was a great experience. And we were 29-3 my freshman year, made it into the national playoffs for Division III. We were 6-0 against Division I schools that year. So, we beat some big programs that, you look at us, we're a tiny school, Frostburg State University from out in the mountains of Western Maryland. But we had a great baseball program, so it was a lot of fun.
No, awesome story. I went to a prep school in New Jersey, and we only had 500 students. I had 100 people in my class, but we were all athletes. So we used to play. It was called the Petty School, and we played all the other prep schools, and they were much larger than us. But we always used to play all the big high schools in New Jersey.
Right.
34,000 students. And hockey and lacrosse, and it was like David and Goliath. And it was so much fun because they'd have fans and we'd have a couple of people coming to see us on the road, and
right.
They would travel well, and beating some of those teams, it was a really good feeling. And even if I lost, I really didn't care, as long as it was a good showing and it was close and we didn't have any blowouts. It was listen, losing is not bad. You learn from it. And if you don't fail in life, if you don't fail at anything, you're never going to learn how to improve yourself. So losing, I've been on one undefeated team. I played in the AAA league here when I moved to Atlanta, and we were 20-0 on the ice. And that was the year I blew my first ACL out. And in the semifinals, I blew my leg out, and knew it was torn. But I never been on an undefeated team. And I was like, "You're going to play in that game?" I'm like, "Look, my leg is wobbling, but I've never ever. I am holding that freaking cup over my head, man."
Right.
Still have that picture with me, and then I went and got cut. And,
right.
So
That's funny.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I look back at some of the stuff I pulled myself. I'm like, wow, that's right before I blew the ACL out. And same thing when I was in Taekwondo, 2 weeks for my black belt test. I was going down to look for some sites for my events, and I was flying to Florida, and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Corson, you want to do one more jump side kick?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Load up the bags." I go up, I jump over the bags, side kick, boom, came down, knee blew out. Same thing, you hear the pop. And I look up, I'm like, pick me up. Call my wife, I'm driving down, and I was like, "Oh, I think I really screwed my leg up," and then, came back, got, torn. And so but I'll tell you what's amazing is that I blew my first one out when I was 39. I blew my second one out when I was about 52. And the difference between, about 10 years as you get older, it takes you so much longer to heal. And I did my first rehab. I went to the rehab place 3 days a week, and I had my surgery in April, and in December I was at the top of Vail skiing with a brace. I came back because I wanted to get back on the ice.
Right.
But I did the second rehab at the house, and I knew everything. So I'd go to the rehab place once a month to get measured. And about 6 months into it, I'm hanging my leg off the bed and everything. I'm like, "Babe, my leg's not getting straight." And she's like, "You're not 20. You're 52."
Right.
So anyway, but I look back. So I'm like Captain Lego. I broke my nose a couple times, legs, fingers. I broke this thumb last season. And anyway, I'm they call me Captain Lego. That's
nice. Nice.
So I could talk sports all day. So let's talk about Water Restoration Group. So over the last, looking back, January of 2020, the country's humming along, cranes everywhere, definitely in Florida, everything's cranking. And boom, March comes. And March Madness gets called off. Your mom can't watch the Final Four, or pick her picks, and and here we are 3 years later. And we're kind of out of the tunnel, I think. Um, but it, you know, it's been a roller coaster, depending on what state you were in, really
Sure.
determined how your business went. So talk about, you know, some of the, you know, the lessons that you learned, you know, as a, you know, as a franchise operator, and how some of your franchisees kind of weathered the storm. Obviously, you know, you guys are national, you know, all over the country. You know, talk
Yeah.
about, you know, how you know, weathered the storm per se.
Sure. Yeah. So I remember very vividly because my office at the time sat right outside the receptionist's station. So I would hear all the phones ringing, and we have corporate locations as well. So our owners own 13 corporate locations. They're still in the restoration business, and then they franchise the concept, and they pay me to run that company for them. But so I would hear all the calls coming in for our corporate office there. And I just remember one day I kept hearing the receptionist saying, well, so you have all that water there, but you don't want us to come out? And people were scared, right? Because of it was all over everything was all over the news. And anyway, I remember that it was a really slow week, and we're like, what's happening? And so I had a call with all of our franchisees and said, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know the impact of this, but we need to figure out a way to potentially replace revenue that is lost during this time, however long it might last. And what we figured out pretty quickly was all of the stuff that we'd use for a really bad mold job getting fully geared up, you know, would protect us. And all of our chemicals were already CDC approved. So we said, why don't we offer some cleaning services, you know? And so we pretty quickly, within a few days, got a bunch of marketing material generated, and we had a couple of our franchisees that jumped on it, especially our franchisee in Long Island, which at the time New York was, you know,
Right.
you know, right there. So anyway, that you know, basically we pivoted for a period and focused doing that a lot. But then, you know, every company out there, you had exterminating companies that were also offering those services too. So the good news about our industry, we were an essential service, so we never had to shut down. The other nice thing is that you know, pretty soon people got over it, and they started calling us back when they had 6 inches of water in their basement or their kitchen or wherever. Yeah, you need to come in. Let's just take the proper precautions and things like that. So, you know, it turned out for some of our franchisees to be a really good year because they had the bonus of the cleaning services on top of all their other normal work. And then we just had to get creative about how we operated as a company, like most companies out there did, you know?
You know, water is a, you know, it's the silent killer. And, you know, I had a guy on the podcast. He was out of Israel, and he builds these sensors that they put into, like, you know, tall, you know, whatever type of building, you know, but mostly, you know,
Right.
anything that's multi-level. And, you know, let's say you're building a skyscraper, you know, 80 floors or 50 floors, and on the 40th floor you have a leak, and it can just do, you know, and it could be at night. So when you come in, you
Yeah.
know, and my mom lives out in Cave Creek, and so she's a snowbird, Ohio during the winter, and I mean in the summer, and then Cave Creek in the winter. And anyway, they close up the house in May, so they left, and they have someone come out there and flush the toilets every couple of weeks, you know, while they're gone. Anyway, they came in. The guy came right after the week that she left. They came and they were trying to get the door open. It was like swollen shut, and they couldn't get
Right.
it open. All of a sudden, they got the door open, and all this water freaking came out. The water line on the refrigerator broke or cracked, and it had
Right.
been running for like a week to 10 days, and
Yeah.
literally destroyed the entire interior of the house. They basically, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage, and they had to rip all of the drywall, all the carpet. You know, it's in the desert, so there's no basement, but
Right.
I mean, literally everything had to get replaced. And it was right when the you know, you had the labor shortage, you had the product shortage, and she couldn't get the stuff that she wanted, you know, the right tile, you know, and I mean, there was a positive. She got to redo the house,
Right.
you know, but the bummer was that, you know, it was basically, it was a shell again, and then they
Yep.
had to rebuild the interior of it. But it was you don't hear water, you know, fire, you can see smoke, you can smell it,
Yep.
you know, anything like that. But water, you don't. It can do so much damage,
Right.
and then you got the mold gig, and
Yeah.
it's so uh during that time, I'm sure a lot of people were very worried,
Yeah.
because, no one knew. I mean, I came back, I was like, oh, it might be a couple weeks. Then it was a couple months.
Right.
And then, here, 18 months later, and I was in Georgia. So we were like Florida. We were still open,
Right.
you
Yep.
know, we're in construction. So if you were in one of the other states that had more regulations, like if you were doing an outdoor highway project, where you had a lot of space and you didn't have to deal with it, you probably, but if you were in a state where you were doing a plumbing project where you had to be close in, you probably didn't get that project done.
Yeah, no doubt.
And a lot of companies, whether they were fixtures or, I can't imagine the amount of companies that got into PPE, whether it was putting in the plastic shields or making masks or whatever it was. Everybody was in survival mode. It was almost like you in wartime,
Yeah.
where the country in World War II, all the factories were doing stuff for our armed forces. And I kind of thought about that, and hearing all these people, it was actually a really positive thing. I always like making if there's a negative, you got to make a positive. You got to find some
Sure.
way to get rid of it. And
Yep.
people rallied, and the ones that pivoted, like even like you said, pivot. I haven't heard that word in a long time. Everybody used it.
Yep.
2.5 years ago. But I pivoted. I went from print face to face, where after I had my event in Jacksonville, my 10th anniversary event, biggest one I ever had, and I was printing my magazine, and then I was fighting with the printer in March. I was like, look, I can't, no one's going to see the magazine. Half the offices are closed. Half the people are furloughed. I don't even know if, I'm just going to waste paper and postage. And so I bid it. I put the magazine out, and then I kind of sat back. I was like, what am I going to do? And my artist and my editor were like, let's go digital. So we did. And now I'm a completely different company, even though I still do the magazine, but I'm
Right.
a completely different company than I was when I started. And I don't miss the post office. I don't miss the printing. I have more exposure. I'm globally, and I became a data guy and digital. And but I was flexible enough where I rolled the dice, because it was very, listen, it's a pun intended. It was dicey,
Oh yeah.
because it was so scary going, oh my God, I'm not gonna have a magazine anymore. And how is everybody going to perceive you or accept you? And um it was it was scary. There were in April, I had a lot of nights I get up in the middle of the night, my wife would be like, where are you going? I'm like, I gotta think. I just gotta like think. And so we made the decision. And who I had on my first cover when I went digital?
Who's that?
I had RPM Pizza out of Mississippi, the director of construction, Glenn Davis. I don't know if you know him, being a Domino's guy.
Yeah.
RPM is
Yeah.
one of the largest
Largest franchisee in Domino's.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we had Glenn's Q&A. He was queued up for June, and for our May June issue, but we went digital monthly. So I said, hey Glenn, would you, can we push you up a month? And he was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we had him on our cover. There it was. And
Right.
so it, being in business, but I learned so much about my business over the last 3 years, that just everything, budgeting, trying new things, learning how to be as lean as possible, time management, and staying positive. Being an athlete, negativity, you can't have it in the locker room. That
No.
person, you can't have him on the team. He's got to go.
Yep.
Or he's got to change, because the team's not going to change. And,
Yep.
and it's like cancer. Negativity is like cancer. I don't have time for it. It's mindset. You got to get rid of it. And so it was, that whole concept of your franchisees going, oh my God, the phone's not ringing. No one wants to see us. They're scared. I mean,
Right.
it probably gave some of them nightmares.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember back in my pizza shop, being a small business owner, you have stressful moments, right? And so, I think a big part of it we try to do is just keep positive, focus on, well, what can we do? Because I'm a big believer in, things are always going to happen, right? But what are you going to do? That's always a question. Things are going to happen, but what are you going to do? And so that's what we focus on. What can we do right now in the moment to try and make the best of this situation, and then keep learning from it? Like you said, you've always got to be learning. You got to try and figure out what's going to happen next, and be there to take advantage of it and capitalize on it. So it was a tough time for everybody, but I think we're a better company coming out of it. But you're right. You had to rethink things. I mean, we had to learn how to sell franchises digitally, virtually. Who's going to write a check and become part of an organization without ever having met face to face? We didn't think people would do that, but they did. We had to
Oh,
figure out how to make that and make them feel comfortable doing that. So it was
well,
interesting.
what do you think for our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk, what do you think the one of the best lessons that you learned, over the last 3 years and during that, maybe the high point of, the shutdown and stuff that, they might, think about, if they didn't apply it, they could apply it still and, for their own organization. What do you think that would be?
For me, I think there's always a way, right? Like being resourceful. I'm a big fan of studying success, and I love reading books about companies and people who are successful. And the one thing that I was struck by the more that I read is how many hardships they had to overcome, right? And then after you read enough of them, you realize, okay, that's the norm, right? So there's always going to be hardships. So how do you figure out ways around them? How do you figure out ways to adapt and learn and get better and yet still keep a good mindset about yourself? So it doesn't tear you down mentally and emotionally and things like that. And so that's what we try to do with our owners, to just get them focused on, what can we do? How can we stay positive? We're going to get through this. This is just another obstacle we have to overcome on our path to success. And fortunately, it's kind of panned out that way.
Obviously being in Florida, you were busy during the cleanup for the last hurricane that came through, correct?
Yeah, so we have 11 corporate offices in Florida and 2 franchisees. So the bulk of our franchisees are spread out in other areas. So our corporate locations were incredibly busy. Some areas it was just we weren't called in because it was just gone. Building wasn't a building to go back and do restoration in because the building wasn't there. But as it came inland and weakened a little bit, like you mentioned before, the water, either storm surge or the blowing rain, goes sideways and gets in every little crack, and all those structures needed to be dried. So we had a ton of work and we're busy. And it was interesting because our offices are located near Daytona Beach. The storm went across the state, and it kind of stalled right before it went out into the Atlantic. And it just dumped tons of rain on us here in the Daytona Beach area. That we literally still have a handful of jobs that we're still working on right now that were larger and just, still wrapping up and keeping busy.
What's interesting about, when that storm, of some of the video that I saw, that the buildings that were built to code, they made it through the wind, and the ones that were older, they were the ones that got the damage. And then obviously, the water table in Florida, there's no basements. So yeah. My thing is, if they're going to rebuild all that, they need to build, everything's got to be built up about 12 to 15 feet on stilts, as far as I'm concerned, right. Or steel beams or whatever it might be. But yeah. That, if you want to get rid of the water damage, and you're near the coast, or you're in a state where, you're going to get that water damage, that you got to build, like, in Hilton Head, my in-laws are there. Their house was 12, 15 feet up. So that first floor was just parking for the cars. And, but your living space was up. And so at least if the water came in from a storm or what have you, that, it's concrete down there. You might get mold. You might have to get that cleaned up, but at least structurally you're still there. So I'm hoping that, Fort Myers and that whole area, that when they rebuild it, they figure out that, hey, you know what? We got to have a roof that's going to handle 300-mile-an-hour winds, not 200, and as well as build those freaking houses up higher,
Yeah.
And, and that storm, it came in like a freaking 90-mile-an-hour pitch. And by the time it got over to the other side, it was like slow ball, softball.
Yeah.
I mean, it had, and I'm surprised Jacksonville didn't get as because it always floods.
Right.
And, and I did an event in Daytona Beach. I was at the Hilton there, right on the water by the pier. And a week later, the hurricane came in, and I'm watching TV, and I'm like, the news is on there. And I told my wife, I'm like, I stayed at that hotel. The guy's right in front of it,
Right.
And they hadn't sent me my bill. So after the storm came through, all the windows got whacked and all that. And so I finally got on the phone. I'm like, "Are you guys going to reconcile?" And they're like, "Listen, we're not worried about you. You know,
Right.
don't worry about it. We got so much damage down here." And it, but the water,
Yeah.
got a lot of people, and like, all my clients that were down there for that retreat, they were like, "Oh my God, we went to that restaurant. I bet you it got flooded." Yeah, it did. Yeah, that
Yeah.
souvenir shop where we got all the shells. Yeah, it did.
Mhm.
And so like I said, if the water doesn't get you, the wind's going to get you.
Yeah.
And and then you need help.
Yep.
So who do you call? Water Restoration Group. Here we come. You know,
Yep.
it's probably it's like the cavalry.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, whether it's becoming a franchisee, or they've got maybe just bump some questions. Hey, I've got this going on, and there might be a franchisee in their location. How would they reach out and contact you?
Sure. Easiest way is our website. You can go to UWRGfranchise.com, or even just go to UnitedWaterRestorationGroup.com. Either one of those, you'll be able to connect with me, and if you're interested in becoming a franchisee or might need our services, either of those are quick, easy ways to get a hold of us. We're an emergency services, so we never sleep. Our phones are always on 24/7, 365. So
Hey, there you go. Listen, there's always going to be something that comes up. So I always like the restoration guys that were out there, because they're kind of like the mailman. You got to
yeah.
be there. It's like Waffle House. You got to
Yep.
be open, because the people that are out there working hard, they got to be able to eat.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it. So I give kudos, because you're basically a first responder. In my book, and
Yeah.
it. And you're going to ease. Not only fix things, but seeing people that are devastated, and then seeing a smile on their face going, "Oh my God, I'm actually going to get through this." That's probably the most rewarding thing you probably see all the time. Am I right?
Yeah, it is. It's funny though, because our franchisees talk about that a lot. We had a conference and they all came into town and they were here, and that subject came up. And pretty much the person, you saw them all start smiling because they all had a story they could tell and share. Whether it be the little old lady on the street who's just, was just horrible and wrecked, or the family, or, but they all have stories about that, because we really do. We get to see people at their worst sometimes, because their largest investment has just been devastated in some way. But we get to see them through the process of putting it all back together, and then, saying, "Hey, well, enjoy, take care, have a great day." And, many people are incredibly grateful for that. And that's a very rewarding part of what we do.
And I'm sure word of mouth marketing, or advertising, is probably the way that you get a lot of your customers. They might not need you now, but they're going to
Yeah.
put you in in your number in the phone, or the person that had your service says, "Hey man, if something comes up, you call
Yeah.
Bob up, and those guys will come out there, and they'll get
Yeah.
it done." Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're a beach town and we are impacted by hurricanes quite a bit down here. I heard a stat on the radio this morning: 40% of all hurricanes in the Atlantic somehow impact Florida, right? So we have customers who call, and they'll call before the storm hits and say, "Put me on your waiting list." Because every restoration company out there, you get overloaded. Like you're already maxed out. You don't have any more equipment, or you don't have any more manpower. You're doing as much work as you physically can in that moment, and you've got to wait till one job closes and you can move that crew and equipment on to the next one. Well, they know that, and we've taken care of them in the past. They'll call before the storm even hits and say, "Put my name on the list," because they know how we operate, and they know, we do great work and take good care of them.
Yeah. Well, I know everybody out there listening to this, you take that to heart. If you know that there's a storm coming, I don't care if it's a snowstorm, thunderstorm, that there's going to be a brutal one coming in, call the restoration company.
Yeah,
What's the worst that can happen is you can cancel the call, and they could go someplace else.
that's it.
And it's kind of like taking your lawnmower to get serviced before springtime comes in. Take it now
Yeah.
when they're kind of lying low, and you won't be sitting there when oh, it's gonna be a month till I get to that. So
Yeah, or if you have a deep freeze in Atlanta like you guys had, right?
oh,
There's so many frozen pipes. Both of my franchisees in the Atlanta area, one's up in the northern area and one's down in McDonough, basically have been busy since Christmas Day. They're
it
so
was
swamped.
it was so warm, and it got cold for like maybe 10 days where it froze at night. And we have a piece of land up in the lake that we're building on. So I had my boat up in the lift, and it's a ski boat. So there's water in the engine, water cooled. And uh, we had just put in the lift, and if it was in the water, it would have been okay, but it was up in the air. And I was going up there every week. I didn't winterize it because I was taking up there every week running it. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be okay. Sure enough, it froze to crack the block. So I just yanked the boat out, and I'm getting the engine worked on. And the guy, he does lawnmowers, and he's an old school mechanic.
Right,
But
right.
he said, so he's rebuilding the engine. He's like, oh yeah, blocks crack, but I'm gonna make it brand new. And this thing, we need to put a tower on this boat too. And but he said, if you would have left it in the water, the guy told me that on the lake, the towman, he goes, if you would have left it in the water, you would have been okay.
Right.
And so I told my son, he works at Boeing, he's a mechanic, and he was on call. They had to tie all the planes down in Charleston.
Oh yeah.
Because that storm was coming right. It was going out in the Atlantic, and then it was going to make the left turn back into Savannah or Charleston, or where it was going to go. So he was there. My wife's like, come home. I'm like, he's not coming home. They're tying down planes. They're moving stuff, or getting, they're flying him to San Antonio or wherever. He's working.
Right.
He's a first responder there. So anyway, so our homeowners association, they were sending out notes, leave your faucets running, and there were people that their houses got flooded in our subdivision.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, who you can call, the plumber, and it was all over Facebook. You got, you're in these chat groups, and you're seeing them, and they're like, oh man, and I was hoping ours, we didn't have the bus, but I left my faucets going.
That's it.
Yeah. Just the little things. Things. I was a Boy Scout, tenderfoot, we below Cub. Be prepared. I told my wife, we're going to leave the faucets. She says, we don't need to do that. I'm like, no. We're going to do it. Okay. I'm not going to worry about the water bill. I'd rather have a little drip and have the little circulation. And anyway, well, if anybody wants to reach me, you can get me at davidc@ccr-mag.com. And I always say this, okay? If you play the lottery, you can't win if you don't buy a ticket. So if you don't send me something, I can't, post it up on the web or get your story in the magazine. Bob's publicist reached out. That's how he got on the show. So if you send me something, or you want to be a guest or whatever, email me. I actually will come back to you. I answer the phone. I change the toner on the Xerox machine. I take the trash out. I'm still playing out, on the green lawn or the frozen pond. So, I'm a jack of all trades, and but we'd love to hear from you. It could be anything. It could be a good, good story, a charity, new announcements, new growth plans, cool project. It could be anything. Send it to me, because I'll post it up there for you. And it's win-win, because I'll give you the link. You can share it on your social media, and and we're all in this together. That's and the sum's always greater than the whole. So, well, Bob, this has been a pleasure. I look forward to meeting you, in person. I'll come down to Florida a bunch of times, and during the year. So I'll bring my my glove, and
there you go.
And
or you can bring your sticks, and you can teach me a little lacrosse.
Yeah, man. It's funny. I have clients where I know that they're hockey players or the lacrosse, and I know I'm going out there. I will bring my stick or my skates, and we'll go do some stick time in the middle of the day, have some lunch, and so knowing that and I can still throw, and catch as well. I might have to wear glasses though, but I would love to do it. So
absolutely.
Well, with that said, we want you to say goodbye from Florida. Tell everybody goodbye.
Take care, guys. Hey, great time. Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
And I'm going to say goodbye from Sugar Hill, just below the Beaufort Dam on Lake Lanier, about 25 miles north. And I want to give a shout out to Electro Romantic, who made my signs. Thank you so much. He's a Philly guy. I know he's going to be pulling for the Eagles this weekend. And like I said, everybody have a great Super Bowl Sunday. Have fun. May the best team win. And we'll do it all again next week. So with that said, we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Bob, I will see you soon. All right.
Absolutely. Take care, David.
All right, man. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it. See ya.